Welcome to Direct Supply's Continuing Education webinar series. Direct Supply offers monthly webinars on a variety of topics throughout the year. The topic for today is emergency preparedness, armed intruder, and active shooter preparation. My name is Savannah Ocasio, and I will be facilitating today's meeting. Please note, the information contained in this presentation is intended to provide general information, but not advice about certain regulations and initiatives. This is not intended as legal or other advice, and each situation may vary depending on the particular facts and circumstances. You should not act upon this information without first consulting with qualified legal counsel. Today's webinar will be presented by Ray Miller. Ray is the Director of Risk and Safety Solutions for Direct Supply. He has guided the development and implementation of resident and employee safety, risk management, and loss prevention programs. Ray has led the Direct Supply Loss Prevention Forum, a network of risk and safety professionals in the senior living industry. Ray has also provided education, training, and insight for senior living providers at all levels within a long-term care community. He has been a regular speaker at many national and state long-term care corporations and conventions. His new favorite title is Grandpa. And now please welcome Ray.
Hello, everybody. It's a tough kind of a topic, too, because there are those, for some, that it's scary. There are those that it's a review. There's some that it's new. But for each of us, it's going to be important that we get onto that bottom line: plans, preparation, and training. We're going to start with a real quick video clip.
Breaking news overnight out of Texas. Right now, police are trying to figure out why a man gunned down two people at a nursing home before killing himself. Friday night, police in Robson, Texas, that's near Corpus Christi, say that wasn't the end of it. Not long afterward, they found two men dead at the home of the suspected shooter. Police believe the shooter killed the two victims at his home, then went to the nursing home and killed two more victims and killed himself. So far, no word on the suspect's identity or his relationship to the four victims.
So what did the nursing home staff do wrong that brought that on them? Usually that kind of a question in a live audience, we get a pretty good discussion, because there's nothing they did wrong. There's nothing they did wrong. And that's the way it will be for you as well. But if you've done your planning, you've done your preparation, you've done your training, that's as good as you can get sometimes, because this is one of those situations where you're not in control, you're being subjected to until you can take control. And it's going to take the staff responding to all the preparation that you've provided to them. This is the agenda. And for some of you, you're used to this, and we'll keep coming back to it, and you'll know when we're done. So let's go look at some initial thoughts, choices, and some insights. I talked to a man by the name of Chad Isabel, an expert in this area, and I asked him for some thoughts about armed intruder, active shooter. So he sent some information to me. An armed intruder event is tough to prepare for, tough for you, and tough for your staff. The reality is that you can't require somebody to risk their life to save someone else. All you can do is conduct the training and empower your staff to make choices and decisions. One of the axioms in my life is to teach correct principle and let them govern themselves, and it's never been more true than with this topic. Don't think that you'll be able to save everyone, because you can't. There isn't a system out there, and we'll look at plenty of the little mnemonics for remembering what to do. There isn't a system out there that can guarantee that. But we are certainly going to try hard. It's really hard to swallow the concept, but that's the conversation you need to have with your staff as well, too. You need to reassure them that their decisions are the right decisions and that you trust them to make them. You have to accept the fact that people will respond differently. Some staff may run straight out of the building. Others will do their best to help. You have to realize that both reactions are okay, and they're wired for that. Sometimes it's born in them to respond the way they're going to respond. Your job is to ensure that the staff have been trained to respond. You'll teach them response protocols. Fact, and it is a fact, if they'll adhere to these protocols, they increase their own survivability and the survivability of those around them. An accident, a good example of a shooting in a lobby because there's the people in the right in the lobby, and they should be implementing the fight protocols. In another mnemonic, it's the counter protocols. Now, if you think about the people who are in the nursing hall closest to that lobby, they should probably be going into lockdown or hide protocols. If you're in the back halls, you should probably be evacuating. And to the extent possible, you should be taking residents with you. But that's not going to be possible often. Quick sidebar. Train everyone that once they lock a door behind them, they're in a hide mode. Don't open it for anyone. You keep that door locked. Even if they hear the executive director's or the DON's voice, you keep that door locked. Wait for the authorities to come. Now, the whole idea behind this is that you decrease the potential targets. We think of it hardening the facility. Well, we want to harden those targets. And those are the people. And if a resident can't be moved, and there's a lot of reasons why that might be so, or if he rejects your instructions, it's best for you to keep moving. Turn out the lights, encourage them to be silent, perhaps even cover them with the blanket, and then run, escape. And it's a hard decision that staff members will have to make. And we'll spend a little more time on this one because they love their residents. Many, many times their love is deep and it's strong for them. But you have to empower them to make that decision. And there's a lot of other things they're going to have to decide on. Quick example of the kinds of deciding that they might have to make. Now, this is actually at a Vermont college. They were in a classroom, and the door opened inward. They had been notified by reverse 911, which is that email texting process that sends alerts out to everybody that's that's logged into this or that's signed up for it. And every student had been put on notice. And they realized that the shooter was actually on their hallway, and there was no way for them to lock that door closed. It was going to open inside. So one of the students laid down, put his feet up against it, and then encouraged the other students to lay down and put their feet on his shoulder, and then the next set of shoulders, the next set of shoulders. And so by the time they got done, they had hundreds and hundreds of pounds against this door. So when the shooter came by, he tried to open the door. He couldn't, so he shot center mass, which is about 3 feet off of the ground. But everybody in there was laying on the ground, so there was no loss of life. That's the kind of decision. That's the kind of quick thinking that saves people. Couple of reality checks for you. Most shooters have plenty of ammunition. They're not going to run out of that. You're never going to have enough information to make the kind of a decision you're most comfortable with. And you'll see in a lot of people that they won't believe that it's actually a shooter happening to them. They go into this denial phase. Now, the other reality is that no matter your training, your current facts, the information that you're gathering is going to trump some of that training. You're going to have to make a different decision. You need to trust yourself to decide and then to act. Keep in mind, and this is my favorite one because it's the simplest one, run, hide, fight. That's a continuum, all right? That's not a discrete set of steps. It's going to be back and forth. There's going to be lots of changes, but you need to keep those choices in mind. And quite honestly, the idea of rehearsal, that's even when you walk into say when you go to the doctor's office, you go into the grocery store, you go to get your car worked on, you go to the theater for a movie. You should figure out as you're walking in, where are my escapes? And you think, oh, I'm not that kind of a geek. We're not talking about being a geek. We're talking about being a survivor, okay? Because what happens if you start your own process of mental rehearsals, your own set of drills, you get better at making decisions. You can pull a team together, the people with you. You can even ask them a few questions. What else happens is you can keep your cool. You can remember what you need to remember. When it's time to commit, you commit and you take action. Very important. Now, this is the first time I'm going to say it, but it's not the last time. You've got to remember you are the intended victim. Okay? That's what we're talking about here. What would make up this plan? What should your incident action plan look like for an armed intruder, active shooter scenario? I'll give you a couple of ideas. First, foremost, always during and after, education. First piece, staff notification. All right? And some of that notification is pre-event. They need to know what their responsibilities are, and they need to know where their safe remote locations are. Where can they go hide? External notifications, policies and procedures, written authorities put on notice before it ever happens. The hospital should automatically be noticed in case there are injuries, there are deaths. Those kinds of things need to be in your planning too. People should be very clear on their escape procedures. I mean, window is an escape procedure. You say, yeah, but I'm in a 7-story building. I get that. Window is still an escape procedure. You need to have the evacuation set up. Now, keep in mind that not all evacuations will be external. Some evacuations will be a form of sheltering in place. Make sure that there's a list of the hospital contacts, critically important in this situation. And again, I'll finish where I left off, or where I started. Education, before, during, and after. Now, when we think of the notification piece that we talked about, there's plenty of different systems out there. And you can see that there's actually 10 colors that are listed on here. Because if you get on to 9 and 10, it's not a color. It's talking about a practice of triage. But if you look at that, they would page code red. I think we'd all know that's fire. Code pink, that would take somebody that's knowledgeable. That would be infant abduction. We wouldn't even need that one. But there's so many colors here, I find it a little bit confusing. Another practice instead of this is what you would do is to actually just declare what the emergency is. I mean, if it's a fire, if it's a kidnapping, if it's an armed intruder, you would actually announce that. Now, we've given you a lot of links so that you can go out and do some pretty good research and find different ideas and different concepts and different approaches for these kinds of things. So you'll have access to these. Now, you can see up here you've got 5 different red blocks, all right? And these are what we think of as your decision, action, response, mnemonics. My favorite. I don't care which one you use. I don't care which one you've trained on. I don't care which one that you're going to use going forward. But once you've decided on it, then you need to promote it. You need to advertise it. You need to remind people of it. You need to mentor it, okay? Run, hide, fight. And that's the continuum. Another one is get out, hide out, keep out, take out. Good one, too. There's a lot more words here, though, okay? Very definitive, very understanding, but you still got to be able to remember it. Now, this is one that's been very well thought through, okay? And they like it because it's Alice, and it's trademarked, and it's copyrighted, and they have all kinds of information available to you. Go Google it, okay? My challenge with it is that evacuate is at the end, and that's not really where it would be located at in the scenario itself. There's 2 more up there: avoid, deny, defend, but then there's also accept, act, assess, act, and alert. And you can pull different parts and pieces out of what we've already talked about, and you can fit them into these different areas. My recommendation to you is make a decision and then publish the daylights out of it. Okay? As you're walking down the hallway, you can even ask people, okay, how do you know what to do next if we have this kind of a scenario? Even if they get one right, give them one of those miniature Snickers bars, okay? Give them a reward for it. Recognize them, pat them on the back, tell them what the rest of them are, and encourage them to continue to work on it. Reality check 1 or 2. When it's safe to run, run. When it's safe to hide, hide. And if there's no other option, you fight. We'll spend more time on each of these things, okay? And again, response mnemonic, it's not a set of discrete choices. It's a continuum. You're going to have to keep making adjustments to your plans. 2 key words in this whole thing: preparedness and awareness. And most of that preparedness, most of that awareness has to be, if you would, hatched during your pre-event training so that people realize this is serious and I have steps to take. This is going to be over quick. Okay, this is going to be over quick. And we'll talk about some of the reasons why they've sped up as much as they have. But it's no matter what you plan, it's not going to happen exactly the way you plan it. So for like so many other drills and so many other presentations on emergency and disaster preparedness, you're not having drills so that they know what to do. You're having drills so that they know how to decide what to do next. 2 of 2, and this is the tough one, okay? You're going to have to be ready after the fact because people are going to need help. They're going to need, if you would, emotional first aid. Now, if you consider that the staff on the floor who will be closest to the residents when this happens, they are wired to care and to give care. They will sacrifice their physical health in order to ensure the safety of a resident. This is going to be a very personal choice for them. They're going to decide, do I run? Do I hide? Do I fight? And even when run is the best decision, there are times that they won't be able to. Okay? And one of the challenges you're faced with, because you've got quality improvement, you've got patient safety. When you think about in Census We Trust, all of those meeting your budget, salaries, reviews, in orders, all of those kinds of things, and they're all challenging the training that you're going to be able to do in any area. Please don't walk past this one. Treat this one kind of like life insurance. You don't buy life insurance so that you can use it, okay? It's not the idea that you want to collect life insurance. You buy life insurance to help others be prepared. All right, this is just real quick.
What was that? Staff, let's go. Let's go. This one. This one. This one. Hurry.
If you can evacuate the area, leave immediately. Don't bother to take anything with you. Encourage others to go with you, but if they don't follow, don't wait.
That?
No.
Okay. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being stay here, stay quiet.
If you're with a patient who cannot escape with you, discontinue care and leave. If you can, secure the patient room upon exiting. Do not stop to help the wounded. Exit the area immediately.
So running preserves your ability to stay alive and preserves your ability to respond to the patients who may need your care after the incident. We may be abandoning that patient for a short time, but if we aren't there to respond to their medical needs after the shooting incident, we're of no help to them.
All right. Now, I think this is one of those kinds of conversations that it's going to be uncomfortable to have, but it's a conversation that's going to be important to have. You're going to need to talk about these kinds of things. Start with your leadership team. You're going to have a mixed bag of emotions and responses, but it's good to talk about it in advance of, because you can help people process in advance of, and it will assist them to make those decisions whenever it comes down to the point where they need to make the actual decision in real life. So think about how you're going to do this. We can make this this video as well as the PowerPoint itself available to you so that you can use it with your staff, and you can pull it apart and use the different slides as you need to. So what's the best thing I can do for my resident? That's kind of the question. What if the resident can't be evacuated? Number one, this is a bit of a review, but you can't tell anybody they can stay or leave. They're going to make their own decision. You got to reassure them that the decision they make is the good decision, and you trust them. And everybody moves forward accordingly. Okay? And quite honestly, whether you help others leave or you help others to shelter in place, you've really helped the potential victims. And regardless of what you train them on, they're going to make their own decision. You're going to have different kinds of people. And there's 6 different ones identified with these few words. Those that can't decide, they don't know what to do. Put your arm around them and take them with you. The ones that I can't leave. I can't leave. Others, I won't leave. And they're going to stay. Some, okay, I can't make, I need to be with you. Where are you going? Some are just going to be totally lost. You're going to struggle with that person. And then you're going to have the loner who just really, quite honestly, has probably already disappeared. There's lots of different kinds of people. And after the fact, you're going to have different kinds of reaction. And this gets into that emotional or the psychological first aid. And this is quite honestly evidence-based. A lot of study went into this, a lot of planning, a lot of training. And they have these three areas, okay? And there's clinical expertise, but there's also the resident and the patient values and what they want and how they feel about it. And so the reality is that the idea of grieving is real. The idea of a process of grieving is real. And so the survivors are going to go through those steps. They're going to need a lot of them are going to need help. In fact, probably all of them. And the ones who think they don't may end up needing the most. And so in this situation, this is going to be one of those pre-event preparation pieces that you have to make. Okay? You're going to have to know who you're going to call. You're going to have a standing agreement with them. And if you'll do this, you're actually going to help those at the beginning. So they're not going to feel the depth of the stress and the upheaval inside of them. And you'll also help them longer term to get over the effects. We're going to take a look at one of the situations that happened, and it was just absolutely devastating. But in this, I've added one piece, and it's just my own thought here, and that's the passage of time. And if you can help them pass that time, if you can help them get through this time of grieving, this time of suffering, and this time of questioning their own decisions, it's going to be best for them. It's going to be best for their residents. All right, let's look at a few of the incidents. All right, just some numbers. Now, there was some older numbers that I used to use, but this is the most updated that we've got. All right, in the United States, these are FBI numbers. There were 50 shootings in 2016 and 2017, and I don't think 2 years can actually serve as a pattern. But in 16, there were 20 armed intruder active shooter events, and 30 in 2017. Most are males. Sorry, guys, most are males. Most of them work alone. Now, here's a little bit of a map, okay, and it shows how many shooters were involved in each one. And you'll have this, and you can go through and you can pull out the details. But in terms of health care, some of the details I've pulled out is there were, out of the 50, 4 were in healthcare settings. There were 4 shooters, and there were 4 suicides. 1 was a former employee. There were 8 people wounded, and 7 people were killed. So those are the numbers. They're not big numbers. But again, life insurance, you don't buy it to use it. You buy it in hopes you won't use it. Fire insurance for your home. All of those kinds of things. This is very much a kind of insurance. Insurance for the survivability of the people that you care for. You care for emotionally, professionally. And here's one of those situations. This is Pine Lake Health Rehab. It's a skilled Alzheimer rehab therapy and hospice. There's 110 beds, and you can see the split between skilled and the Alzheimer's. And this happened back in 2009. It was on a Sunday, March 29th, 10 a.m. in the morning, and a man walked in with weapons, and his whole intent was to take lives. And the challenge, some of the devastation that happened, though, wasn't those who were killed. It's those who survived this. Opening statement from the prosecuting attorney. Robert Stewart entered Pine Lake that day with a specific reason, to chase down Wanda Stewart. He brought 4 guns and a bag of ammunition with the intent of creating mass casualties. One of those weapons was a .22 long rifle he left out on the roof of his car in the parking lot with a bag of it was fully loaded, but with a bag of additional ammunition. He was convicted September 3rd, 2011, a couple of years later. He was 45 years old. He was convicted of second-degree murder of 8 individuals. He was on antidepressants and 6 Ambien pills. He was sentenced to 142 years in prison. Now, I often stop and ask, is there anybody in the audience that has a sense of satisfaction from that long prison term? And I have yet, and this is years, I have yet to have anybody raise their hand and say, yeah, that's what this is all about. No, it's not. No, it's not. And quite honestly, this is the man. And when I look at them, I have friends. I've looked like that. This isn't somebody that I would necessarily pick out and say, oh, I think he's the shooter. And that's the challenge we have here. We don't know who that shooter's going to be. So we can't prepare just by figuring out, okay, who's the most likely, because you're probably not going to get it right. I mean, there's another set of pictures, and when you look at this, if you want to try to analyze them psychologically, you see those 4 sets of numbers there. Those are the kinds of things that seem to be prevalent when they did a look back of the individuals, of the shooters, okay? And even if you add them all up, it's not a big enough number that you want to risk people's lives by just using that, okay? You can try to watch for those kinds of behavior changes, but the reality is you might not see them. What a happy, joyous, good-looking young man. But something changed, okay? Wouldn't expect. I'd hire him in a second. Now I'm not so sure. And this young man, he's got a beautiful smile. He's handsome. I got more hair than he does, but that's maybe the only difference on the outside. I wouldn't have spotted him. He went to a movie theater in Colorado, and that's where he wreaked his havoc. You're not going to be able to know by looking. You're not going to be able to know by looking. So some lessons learned from events that have occurred. Ensure that your plan details the response during, but also after the event. Make sure you know what you're going to do, how you're going to account for the people, how you're going to get them the psychological or the emotional first aid, how you're going to move forward, how you're going to communicate. Those kinds of pieces are going to make a big difference if you put that into your plan now. Whenever you're building your plan, involve your first responders. Involve your interdisciplinary team, and you know what? You can even pull in some of your frontline staff. Pull them in. Make them part of it. Then it's not your plan, it's our plan. Very important. And I've already mentioned the idea of sheltering in place in this sort of a situation, so you need to think about both of those. Where would they shelter in place? What kind of rooms do you have that could be made secure from the inside? Lights being turned out, something being blocked against the door, all of those kinds of parts and pieces, okay? And pull people in from the outside, too. Sometimes that fresh perspective can make such a difference for us. Post-event counseling, we've talked about that a couple of times. And then practice, and practice, and practice. And here's reality. We've mentioned several times we've had different kinds of situations that would come up. We had to change our plans. We planned it a certain way. We had a drill based on this, but the facts didn't lay out exactly the same way. This is just a quick little side. I don't know how many of you ever remember watching Hill Street Blues. Maybe I'm dating myself, okay?
That's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
And that's true for you, too. Let's be careful out there. You do your planning, you do your policies and procedures, and you do your training. And then everybody has a better chance. So let's talk about what are you going to base your planning on? This is not new if you've done any preparation based on the federal standards. This is prospective hazard analysis. What are your chances? What are your risks? What are the likelihoods? How might it happen? And then you build your plans, your policies, your procedures. You develop your training. You conduct your training. And then you have your drills or you have your tabletops. You have your exercises, okay? So let's go take a look at just a little bit of it. So all hazards risk analysis or risk approach, doesn't really matter what you want to call it. Even the standard doesn't specify a particular title for it. But I'll tell you what, there's 16 variations of different kinds of emergencies that you might have to plan for. And any one of them can happen. And any one of them you need to be ready, including this one. On your plan, and this is sort of a broad outline, this is a broad outline of the kinds of things you need to give some thought to. Take a look at your facility-based exposures, but talk to other people, talk to other care providers, talk to your first responders, get more information about the community that's based out there. What are your strategies? Are they flexible? Do you build flexibility into the strategies that you've developed, whether it's for sheltering in place or it's for evacuation or it's for how you're going to do your training? Because if something changes, say you add a hallway on, maybe you open up a hallway for a daycare center for employee staff because you're struggling with staff hiring. Any of those kinds of things, you're going to need to back up and make sure that you've got the flexibility to consider all of those kinds of pieces. Perhaps you add a hallway of much higher acuity residents, okay? You devote a hallway to something. Maybe it's those requiring tube feeding. Maybe it's something to do with respirators, okay? All of those different kinds of exposures. You've got to have a plan that's flexible enough to encompass that. Now, those little icons you see on the right-hand side are kind of the universal threats that we all kind of think about. The unique threats, those are the ones you're going to identify with your all-hazard risk assessment. Lots of tools out there. Lots of tools out there, okay? Lots of ways of doing that assessment. But again, that's the beginning. Once you do the assessment, then you actually need to build the plan. All right. And then this is just sort of a reality check for us, okay? I look at a blue screen and it tells me my computer just crashed. Okay? That's the blue screen of death. My computer didn't just crash. But I tell you what did crash. It was Sandy. It was a hurricane that came into New York and destroyed so many things. It literally, and I have that picture of the outside of this community too. It ripped the top off of this community. They ended up not even being able to reopen this community. But do you want the good side, the rest of the story on this? They didn't lose a single life. And that really is the outcome that we have to seek for. You do your best. It's not always going to go exactly the way we want it to, but if you've done your best, you're going to have to find satisfaction in that. Let's talk a little bit about education and training. All right, so failure to respond. What's it look like? And I want you to notice the green word at the top, deer in the headlights, okay? I don't know if you've ever driven down a road and you see this beautiful buck, a doe and a couple of fawns standing there in the middle of the street looking at you. Why aren't they moving? Because their eyes work differently than ours. They are able to see very clearly in very low light levels, so that when that headlight hits their eyes, they are completely and totally blind. They have no idea what to do next. So you know what? They don't do anything. It only takes a few seconds. But a car traveling along at 60 miles an hour can cover a lot of distance in a few seconds. Now, see the deer word. I want to change that now, okay? Your community, your school, your grocery store, your nursing home, your assisted living complex, and you look out your door, and that's what you see. You know what? There is another kind of deer involved in this one as well. All right? Why do we not know what to do? Long list of reasons. Okay? That optimistic bias is that we convince ourselves that it won't be that bad. Not in my world. It won't be that bad. Think about culture. I do have a lot of time talking about culture. Not for this presentation, but it matters here too. If it's a culture of trust, if it's a culture of virtue, those are good cultures and people do much better. Practice and rehearsals, we talked about that. Get on to the very last one. Unable to comprehend the scope of events. Just like that deer that stands there. Just stands there. They don't know what to do, except that it's going to take more than just the adjustment of their eyes for your staff to know what to do. Some of the kinds of training that's out there. For any nurses that might be here, you can go out to NIOSH, National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health, and they actually have training, and they're free CEUs. There's 2.6 contact hours available to you, okay? It's good training, too, and it really brings you up to speed a little bit. It doesn't necessarily to tell you how to do the training and those kinds of things, but it surely lets you know in a concise way what you're going to need to do your planning and your training for. FEMA is another source. They've got a long list. The last one I took was that very one at the bottom, 907. Now, for me, actually, it's weird, but Christmas was on a Sunday the year I took this, and I sat there that Friday night sort of by myself. Family was off doing a lot of stuff, and that's when I completed this thing. And I'll tell you, right up front, don't have a full belly, a comfortable chair, and low lights when you take the FEMA training, because it'll put you to sleep. but it does a good job of outlining for you. And here's some of the kinds of things that you're going to find yourself becoming very much more conversant with and able to respond to. Prerequisites, none. It takes about 45 minutes. So it's not a long course, but it's a good, well-rounded beginning. Armed Intruder, Active Shooter education, now on more the community or the facility-based, you can see the list. What's a gunshot sound like? I actually went through a process of trying to find a clip that I could play on this slide, and it never worked out for me, but they're out there. They need to learn how to respond, okay? And they need to know that I'm going to survive. I've been in a situation, I was much smaller, I was much weaker, but I wasn't going to die, okay? Sometimes it's going to be your commitment that makes the difference. Once you get to a point where you can, call 911, and then whatever the officers say, do it. Okay? Do it. If you take knowledge and you add practice to it, you get a response. And I always like to differentiate between response and reaction. A reaction is like you immediately try to just, your eyes close. Okay, that's automatic. That's a reaction. It's built in. You don't even have to think about it. If we can get to that point with this, that's good. A lot of times it's just going to be, we need to respond based on our training, okay? And make sure that you include your local authorities. Let's talk about pre-event training. And this is from the management side, things that you must do. It's back to the culture thing. Make sure there's respect and teamwork. Make sure that you build that in. Make sure that your evacuation routes remain the evacuation routes. It's one thing to put the posting up. We make the announcements throughout, in our meetings, hey, da-da-da-da-da is the way we're going to take the second floor out. Go back 6 months later and see if they still look like evacuation routes. And put them throughout. It's not just for you. It's not just for your staff. It's also for your first responders so that they can look and they can see where the routes are. And you're going to have to teach them how to respond to the best you can, knowing that you're still going to be left with their innate response, okay? Encourage your first responders to participate in your building of the plan. Watch, be vigilant, and then responsive. Now, this is the first time, number 8, is assemble crisis kits. And where would you put them? You would put them in those places of refuge. What kinds of things would they have? Oh, things like some water, things like a flashlight, a small flashlight. Those are the kinds of parts and pieces that you would put in it, perhaps a first aid kit. Okay? So you're going to need to decide where you're going to put those kinds of things. But all of those steps are pre-event. My question to you, and you're going to get this 5 different times, my question to you is what's in your current plan? Time of event. Again, facility management. You're going to have to start doing a bit of a lockdown, all right? Number 1, you don't want people, innocent people, entering into your community. You're going to want to make sure that you start restricting access any way you can to rooms and to hallways. So you're going to have a plan. You're going to have to think about it. You may not have a lot that you can do on this. You may have a very open design. Make sure that your security team, and I don't want you to think when I have security team on the slide that I'm talking about armed guards. Okay? In essence, every member of your staff that's there that day is part of your security team. Okay? And they're going to need to be able to help others coordinate. And then things that are important, because when this event is over, even OSHA steps in and says, now account for the employees that you evacuated from the community. So when you start looking through there, you're going to see personnel list, phone numbers, keys to get into places, daily schedules, who was on and who was actually working that day. That kind of information, again, that falls in management's purview. Number 2, what's in your current policies? Post-event, again, management. We're going to get to the frontline staff as well. Follow-up actions, accounting for everybody, notification of families, managing the consequence, and this is back to that first aid as well, right there, all right? Make referrals, bring them in, encourage everybody to participate in some of the meetings that are held for that. Then after the event, you're going to want to sit back and figure out what went well and what do we need to change. You may even want to find a forum where you can share some of this with your local communities as well. And then use an after-action report. Please use an after-action report, but do that for your drills, for your exercises, for any participation you have, because that after-action report is how you're going to be able to gather the information, document the information, show your analysis, and use that whenever you're actually surveyed on it. Again, the question: what kinds of things must we be doing always? Your mental plan. Rehearse your exit plan. And when in doubt, get out. Nice little phrase, but truly important. Be aware of the indications of danger. You can 5 through 8. Caution when entering areas. I can't tell you how many times with cameras that are all over the place where somebody runs into the path of the shooter. Okay? So those kinds of decisions, before you go running into the lobby, make sure the lobby is clear. In even the exit options when you go somewhere else, never go back to pick up personal items. Don't. Okay? I don't care if it's your purse, it's your phone. Leave it. It'll be just fine. As you're standing outside in a position of safety, don't allow anyone else to go in after you. Don't allow anyone else to go in after you. You're the protector for them now. And we talk about going out through windows. I mentioned this once before. Even over second floor windows. Now, if any of you watched any of the videos of the buildings in 9/11, we saw people going out from the 100th floor. Why? Because the fear and the threat was so great on the floor they were on that they decided to take that leap. Okay? I don't know what safe is. I know this much. It depends on how close threat is. Make sure that you talk about how to barricade a room. And if you've got identified safe harbor rooms, make sure that you actually take people in there. Now, when we say silence your phone, even turn the vibrator off and identify what your weapons are. Quite honestly, an IV pole would be a weapon. A fire extinguisher would be a weapon. A stapler, those ones that fold in half, and you can staple multiple sheets together. You open that thing up and you grasp it in your hand, that can be a weapon too. Okay, and on the way out, when you see police coming in, raise your hands, fingers spread, and keep them over your head so that they know they can keep on moving. Number 4, what's in your current policies and procedures? Here's a quick little piece that's window of life, active shooter response. All right? And it's kind of cool. There's four different pieces to it. And it's an emergency response approach. It's an international organization that Safe Havens International came up with. All right? Number 1, safety for you. Number 2, safety for those near you. Number 3, safety for those further out but not yet aware. And number 4, notify. All right? So another good set of quick things to remember. All right, responsibilities. Everybody's responsible for these. Pre-event. Learn the signs. Learn the steps. Be prepared. Emotionally, physically, cognitively, those kinds of parts and pieces you should carry with you always. When an active shooter's in your space, run. What does it mean? If there's a way out, take it. Take it even if others don't agree with you. Take beings, not things. Okay? And that little box that popped in there, you're not going to be able to convince everybody in a moment. Some people will insist on climbing underneath their desk. Do your best to get them out, but you'll be able to come back and help them perhaps. But you get out. Protect others to the degree that you can. And when safe, call 911. Everybody should have those locked in mind. And they're pretty natural, too. They're pretty straightforward. They're pretty orderly. All right? If evacuation's not possible, now we go to the hide. Lock, blockade the door, silence the cell phone, vibrator off, conceal underneath, behind, No lights. Turn the lights down if you can. When you lock the door and you barricade the door, don't remove those things. Keep them in place and be quiet. Be quiet. But be prepared for the next one, because you know what it is? The fight. And I've actually edited some of these a little bit from personal experience. United commitment. You have to be, as a group, totally committed. When this happens, it's not time to question. It's only time to take action. We talked about improvising weapons. And I took out the word act with aggression, attack with aggression. Okay, the alternative to success in this instance sometimes is death. Act with aggression. No, attack with aggression. And it says attempt to incapacitate. No, you don't attempt to incapacitate the shooter. You don't attempt. You incapacitate the shooter. Never, ever forget the alternative. And I already shared that with you. Okay? And when you think, I can't do this, yes, you can. Many people have, and you need to be part of that many. When 911, when you call on 911, they're going to ask you a couple of things, okay? If you're going to be able to talk to them, number one's important. You need to remain calm, and you need to obey whatever they tell you to do. Hands visible. No pointing, no yelling. And you're going to be concerned that they're not stopping to help the injured. It's not their job. Their job is very different. Their job is to remove the harm. Know that people are waiting to come in and help the injured. They are waiting right outside. When you think of it, think of the good guys, the bad guys, and the weapons. This is the kind of information they're going to ask you for when you call. Where are you? Is anybody injured? How many are with you? Do you know about hostages? Bad guys, how many? Where are they? What are they wearing? Where were they headed when you last saw them? Have they left the scene? And the weapons? How many? What types? And even if all you can say is it's a pistol, it's a long rifle, it looks like one of those black army guns, whatever you can describe, okay? Give them the information. How many shots have you heard? And when did you last hear a shot? That's the kind of information they're going to want for you, okay? Just repeating what's on that prior slide. But it's worth repeating. It's worth repeating. So you're giving care, and you hear a shot or you hear a page, and you glance out the hallway, and you see down at the end of the hallway a black figure, silhouetted figure, because you're not going to see any details. You quietly close the door. You prepare your resident. Okay, you prepare your resident as best they can. Now you look out again, because now it's time to run. Except that now it's not time to run. You have to be ready in the moment's notice to take the action that needs to be taken. Because when that moment passes, that action may have passed also. All right, fight, take out John Meese. Don't have time to spend a lot of time on this, but he was a hero. He was a student at Seattle Pacific University. He was in a classroom. They had been put on notice that there was an armed intruder. And I don't know how many of you know what a break-action shotgun is, but it's a double-barreled shotgun. And he glanced out the window because their room opened to the outside, and they could see out in the courtyard out in front of them that the armed intruder had entered it. He fired off 2 rounds. Now, the thing about John Meese was the fact that he had a spray can of a spray device of pepper spray in his backpack. So he pulled that out, and he just cracked the door a little bit, and he watched. So when the shooter fired both rounds, he now had to stop, break open the shotgun, eject the 2 shells, reach into his pocket, get 2 new shells, and put it in. At that very first step of breaking open the gun, that's when John ran. He ran out, and he sprayed him, and he sprayed him, and he sprayed him. He ripped the gun out of his hands, and he tackled him to the ground. As he was laying there on the ground with him, the shooter was able to pull a knife out, and he was able to get rid of the knife and throw it away. Another student came up and said, "What can I do to help?" And John wanted the knife to be even further away. Okay? Now, There's a news clip on here that you'll get, and you can actually click on it. It's just audio, okay? It's just an audio, but it's worth listening to. That's John in the gray shirt in the middle. And as I've looked at this, I've often thought, because I've used this slide many times, I hope that police officer said to him, John, thank you for your service. A mother of a son on campus. She said, my son was on campus that day. I'm forever grateful for John Misa's quick thinking and brave action. The outcome could have been so much worse. How did he handle it? He committed to action. He waited for a tactical advantage. There was a diversion, a distraction, and he moved. And here's the way it came out, okay? Now, my question for you is that red box up at the top. What do you want your staff to be prepared to do? All right. That's the agenda we had. That's what we went through. Now, I said I was going to ask you that question 5 times. I only asked it of you 4 times, because here's the 5th time. What do your current policies contain? Hey, Savannah, I think it's your turn.
Thank you, Ray, for that great presentation. We do have time for a few questions. The first question today is, could there be legal problems for staff if they leave residents behind and the resident gets injured or killed?
It's hard to judge what juries will do. It's hard to judge without knowing the venue. You can't even develop what your expectation is. But it is a well-received, well-recognized fact that you cannot, these are not first responders that we've employed. They are not trained in these kinds of things. The sense is that they will be okay if they leave, because the intent is that they're coming back to give the care that resident is going to need, because they're going to have emotional trauma as well, too. And somebody's going to have to be there to take care of them.
And now please welcome our TELS trainer, Dave Race, to show you some of the emergency preparation tools and other great resources that are available on the TELS platform.
Great. Thank you very much, Savannah. And thank you, Ray, for that information. I know it's a heavy subject, but it's important. And one of the things that I really appreciated about Ray's presentation, and one of the things that he kept saying, is that you have to make sure that you're planning, you're preparing, and you're training for these things. And that's really where TELS can help you. As many of you maybe already TELS users, you're well aware that you can create your entire emergency plan on TELS. Hopefully, most of you, if not all of you, have your plan ready and saved in the platform, as well as hard copies in your community for the upcoming year. Of course, we know our inspectors are going to be very strict coming up. They're going to be asking to see that plan. They are absolutely going to be asking you, have you updated your plan? And the second question is always going to be, can I see it? So make sure that that's available. But one of the real benefits when you're using TELS is that you are able to actually update your plan. So this is something that is probably not going to, it's not like a hurricane or something like that where it's guaranteed to happen, but you absolutely must be prepared, as Ray had pointed out. So you want to make sure you go in and update your plan. You can absolutely do that right under the Reports tab. You can search for that documentation, bring up your plan, and update it and resave that in the TELS platform to make sure that everything is there. I'm just going to quickly go through a few of the tools that we have in TELS that you can use when you're creating your plan and or adding to it with things like the active shooter or the intruder. So the first thing that I want to bring up is the all hazards risk assessment. So it is linked right in here. It's an actual task that has hopefully been already completed by you out there, and you've saved your risk assessment in TELS. Well, now you can actually go back and you can update that risk assessment, adding this information in. So when you're doing the risk assessment, make sure you follow the instructions. So the risk assessment tool is right in the task. You can link right to it. You want to read through the instructions. You want to go through the hazardous areas section, and then you're going to want to actually score yourself in all of these areas. Of course, if you live in a hurricane section, you're going to want to make sure that you're prepared for that, for tornadoes. But if you scroll down under the human events, you want to make sure that you're hitting this area as well. While these are, possibly less likely to happen. They are things that, as Ray pointed out, we need to make sure that we're prepared for, and you need to add those into your plan so that you can train with those and that you're able to show that those items are actually in your plan. So very important, and again, this is linked right to the resources section of your task in TELS. You can redo your risk assessment, you can update it, you can add that document into TELS, and you can save it right here in the TELS platform. One other area that I want to cover very quickly is the training tab. So under the training tab, we have our entire emergency preparedness ruling section. And this is going to really help you. It gives you an after action report sample. So when you run your drills, when you run your tabletop exercises, you need to make sure you're filling out your after action report. We've got all of the updated webinars that Ray has done over the last year for overall emergency preparedness. Those are invaluable information. You need to make sure that you're watching those. And we are going to have this webinar stored under the emergency preparedness ruling section in the TELS platform as well. So you'll be able to view the webinar, view the slides as needed to help you add this information into your plan in the TELS platform. So that is all the information we're going to go through from TELS. If you are currently a TELS customer, you hopefully have all this information already stored in there. If you're not, please contact TELS. We would love to give you some more information on the platform. You can contact us at 800-667-3880 or simply email us at requests@tels.net.
Thank you so much, Dave, for that great demonstration. And thank you again, Ray, for presenting our webinar content today. If you have any questions about the information or products discussed, please reach out to webinars@directsupply.com. For more information about upcoming webinars, please visit www.directsupply.com/webinars. Once again, thank you for attending today.